Hi, welcome to OMS Planetary Watch. My name's Olga Morales. Now, today I'm going to do a deep dive into 2026. Something extremely important is happening. You may have already heard, if you're following other astrologers, that we are having two planets moving into Aries, 0 degrees of Aries. That is, we're having Neptune actually on the 27th of January. And then we have Saturn on the 14th of February. They're both moving into Aries this year. And then together they'll be conjunct on the 21st of February in 0 degrees of Aries. Okay. Now, what's so important about this is that their cycle is coming together at that degree. The last time that happened was in 1703. Now, I have already recorded a video in relation to this, and it's called the Sack of Rome. If you want to go back and have a look, it looks like this. I recorded it last year. I found some amazing lineups there. But today, I'm going to go even further because during my cycle hunting and my forensic astrological work with cycles, I've discovered something in relation to midpoints. Okay, and I think this is really fundamental to studying cycles as well. And let me explain what I've discovered. It's really quite astounding when I look at it. Okay, so on the 24th of February 2026, it's not just we're looking at the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries, there's something else happening because Pluto and Uranus are also at this degree. Okay, they're at 1 degree of Aries. Now, that is a huge cycle I've been looking back, and literally it's a 499-year world reset cycle. So, last time it happened, it was in 1527, okay? And this is all so essentially we have four planets coming to the exact midpoint. And at Aries, especially close to the Aries 0 degrees, is all to do with the world point. It's called like the axis mundi of the zodiacal wheel. Everything starts at 0 degrees of Aries. It's the equinox point. It's a birth of the sun every year, and it's with the beginning of things. Okay, so this is so important, so significant. So, of course, me being who I am, I've always got to look at what was happening at that time, and are these cycles really important to us? Do they really have an impact? If we look back historically, Neptune has always been associated with mass movements and socialism, idealism, and dissolving of governments and corporations, and and so the fact that Uranus shatters things. It's a collapse. If you look at Eberton's description of these combination of these planets, Uranus Pluto, he calls the collapse of the old world order, um, and also the new one. So it's transformation and revolution. So it's a real collapse and then starting anew. And with the Saturn Neptune, he calls it suffering and renunciation. It's also to do with sickness, okay? So it's and depression. So there's a lot of energy here. So let's have a look at what else I've found because it's truly is amazing. So the midpoint, as I said, the midpoint is halfway. The last time was 1527, but then when I discovered the midpoint of the cycle, halfway, it was in 1775 and a bit. And this is when the American Revolution broke and the old imperial order. So now, 499 years later, we've reached a completion point, and history tells us what happens at completion. So I was like, it's incredible how this cycle is so significant. Okay, so let me explain. I have explained all this now, but I believe this is like if we look at the Aries point, it's almost like the alpha omega of the whole zodiac. Okay, the end and the beginning, and it's like the snake or the dragon eating its own tail. Okay, so what's a planetary signature? The Saturn Neptune collapse of illusions and institutions. Uranus, Pluto, technology and power revolution. And when they meet, this is a civilization breaks and a new one begins. So we're at the crucial point of this letting go of the old and starting anew. So it is really a global reset with this Aries energy. Okay. So what happened in 1527? Well, I've already explained in my previous video. We had the sack of Rome. It was a collapse of the Pope, of the authority of the Pope, at the end of the High Renaissance, and also spiritual and civilization collapse in many places in the world. So also there was the global Reformation. The Protestant Reformation. England broke from Rome. The New World colonized, global empires rose, and merchant capitalism replaces priestly authority. So a complete shift here. Okay. So, what was created? Nation states, global trade, banking dynasties. This is in 1527. Scientific rationalism, military power, and colonial expansion. So, now we're coming to the second reset of this, and this is on the 24th of February 2026 when the Saturn, Neptune, midpoint, and Uranus, Pluto all together at 1 degree of Aries. So, this is opening of a new world era. I don't want to say order. But it definitely is the reset at this Aries degree. Okay. So, what might collapse in 2026? Maybe there's false financial systems, debt based currencies, digital illusion economy, synthetic profits, and corrupted authority. I'll talk about the false prophets. There's a lot of them that are, what we would call influencers that really haven't studied anything, but they're using AI to make predictions and to gain followers. Okay. I think that's really going to collapse with this Aries energy. And what could be born in 2026? So we can have new monetary systems, decentralized power, sovereign individuals, AI, quantum, and energy systems. Like this is a complete new way of living now. Okay. Don't expect what has been around for 100 years. It's going to continue now because it's a complete revolution. So let's have a look at the half cycle, Pluto half cycle harmonic. Okay. So from 1527 to 1775 is 248 years. That's one cycle of Pluto. And then from 1775 to 2026 is 251 years. Okay. So the average is 250 and two Pluto cycles, right? So we're in that zone of this cycle. This is how it works. But the mid cycle, this is what blew me away when I put this up. Basically, when the cycle in 1527, then the half of the cycle in 1775, and then the last one, which is coming up soon, is in 2026. Now, can you see what's happening here? I've basically put the inner wheel is 1527. So you can see that in that year, the Neptune and Saturn were at that point. But then after the midterm, they were opposite one another. Okay, so there's a half point of their cycle, and Pluto and Uranus are pretty much in the same zone. They're either in Capricorn, Aquarius, or Gemini and Taurus. Okay, but the fact that the Saturn and Neptune swap are opposite each other themselves, in this cycle just brings it all together. And then they come together, their midpoints come together at 0 Aries or zero Libra, which on the dial, on the wheel, is always still 0 degrees of cardinal. It's still activating the world point. So this is what, I'm thinking these cycles are incredible. So let's have a look at what happens. So Uranus revolution harmonic. So we know that Uranus takes 84 years its orbit. Times 6, you get 504 years, okay? So it aligns with the 499 reset. So the Uranus Pluto is about global revolution, okay? Then we have the Saturn Neptune over 500 years. So Saturn is 29.5 years. So that's 17 cycles. Neptune is 165 or sometimes 64, so that's 3 cycles. So their conjunction is every 36 to 37 years, so that's 14 cycles of their synodic cycle in this 500 or 499 years. That's why it all comes together. So there are harmonics, so they're wheels within wheels, huge orbits of planets, smaller ones, and then they'll align at some stage, and you'll be able to see this, okay? So there was something called, I actually wrote about this, I think, 2 years ago with Pluto, because there was um, this man called Sir John Glubb wrote something called the Fate of Empires in 1977, and it's all about his research that he said that the life of an empire is between 248 and 250 years. Now that fits in perfectly with Pluto's orbit. Okay, so in mundane astrology, Pluto is associated with power, empires, elites, collapse, and rebirth. And many astrologers have already observed this. So empires tend to transform, fracture, or collapse near the Pluto return. The most famous is obviously we've just seen, and it's in actually happening now, is the United States. Pluto return was actually on the exact date was the 28th of December 2022. Okay, so this is a cycle for the United States. Now they're waiting for the Uranus return in Gemini, which will be actually on the 26th of July 2027. But I found that their actual return of the exact midpoint that they for the 4th of July chart, 1776, Uranus Pluto is actually at 3 degrees of Aries, okay? And that return will be exact on the 12th of May 2026. So that's the midpoint of this big between the Pluto return and the Uranus return. The midpoint of that for United States will be on the 12th of May 2026 this year, okay? So this is extremely important for United States. Now, there's also another academic researcher called Peter Turchin. He was a mathematical historian who studied empires as well, and he found that there were secular cycles lasting between 200 and 300 years, and often clustering between 240 and 260. So these cycles typically follow a pattern of expansion, stability, elite overproduction, internal conflict, collapse, and reset. No astrology involved in his work, or maybe he was behind the scenes, who knows? And he used purely historical data. But we know behind these cycles, these numbers, there are planetary cycles, okay? So he had the generational theory, which is called the fourth turning. You may have heard this, Strauss and Howe. They believe that there's a generational cycle between 80 and 90 years. Well, we know that fits perfectly with either one cycle of Uranus at 84 years or 3 cycles of Saturn. Okay. Then we've got, he also talks about the fourth turnings, which is between 320 to 360 years. But a major systematic crisis occurred every third turning, which is 240 and 270 years. And so this links in with this cycle that I'm showing you, because this is crisis of wars, revolutions, financial resets, and constitutional breakdown. So that's the midpoint cycle of what I've just been showing you. So what's the mathematics of this? 1527 to 1775, 240 years of Pluto. 1775 to 2026 is 251. Okay, another Pluto cycle. Total 499 years. So this confirms double Pluto world reset, exact Pluto gate, and then we've got a completion now. Okay, this is just for the United States, but it fits into this cycle that I found, right? So we've got, just to summarize, we've got a Saturn Neptune midpoint, Uranus Pluto activation, and half the cycle is 1775. Now, putting it all together, Pluto, empires die and are reborn. Uranus, revolutions and technology. Saturn, law, structure, collapse. Neptune, mass streams dissolve. all converge at Aries, the world axis. So I put it on the world map just as a reference point. We can always refer back to this video. When we put these, I've just put Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Pluto on this chart because they're the four planets that are aligning in Aries. And you put it on the world map, and geodetically, everything starts at Greenwich or 0 degrees of Aries, the starting point. So you can see all the lines represent areas where these planets are actually aligned, either conjunct, square, opposite. The cardinal points on the earth plane, okay? And you can see, just have a look yourself where these lines are going through, all right? And you can see some really important areas, and obviously Aries is said to rule over England and this area here because it starts there. But you can see other lines, and you can see also lines going through Iran at the moment, the middle of here. So Greenland's still in the picture, as I've pointed out in previous videos. So I would recommend that you sit a little bit of time with this, because if you want to look back to what was happening previous times that they were aligned here, that's a good point of research, which I've done myself. But this is what it looks like. So we've got some areas that are in the hot spot for this alignment. Obviously, the United States, we can see the lines going here through this as well. Okay, so China is involved because of it's in a cardinal sign as well. So have a look, and I don't want to say too much, but we know that we are going through major changes, and this is the sign of the times. So you have to be prepared for these sudden collapsing and restructuring, and things that you have felt safe in the past may not feel. They're going to dissolve, because what happens with Saturn wants to keep the law, wants to keep the structure, but Neptune comes along, he wants to dissolve everything. He has no boundaries, okay? And the fact that Neptune is in Aries, I just feel like it's a warrior, a spiritual warrior energy. So you have blind faith in something, you're very committed to an ideal, and you're using the Aries Mars energy, because Aries is ruled by Mars, as a warrior. So you can become like a fighter. I think of the Crusades. This has got Crusades energy to me, but it's like that. Okay, so we've got really different energy. One's trying to contain, one's trying to dissolve. So how do they work? Well, they don't. There's a lot of friction, and like it at Aries, it's like a huge volcanic eruption type things, right? So the Uranus Pluto too at Aries, it's all about the collapse of the old and like complete transformation, and old structures won't exist anymore. They have to collapse before we can have the new. And I think this is a build up to the big, like the dawn of the age of Aquarius. Nothing's supposed to be the same anymore. So unfortunately, we have to go through all this dramatic change very quickly. In a way, it seems to me with the Aries energy, it's going to be quick like a flash. And so just be prepared for changes to happen suddenly. And yeah, so it's really important, but I think this midpoint alignment is the most important one for this year. So as I said, basically, I've just said there's a collapse of illusion, shock, and power transfer. So globally, we're going to see a lot of leaders already, as we can see, um, not wanting their power is diminishing or is being overtaken. Okay, revolution. So end of old authority. Financial systems will probably reset, currencies as well, technology, and new economic world cycle starts. Okay, so thanks for listening. Keep if you like this video, just subscribe. I've always putting things that I find. This is part of my OMS planetary watch. I have courses. I've got an inner circle if you want to subscribe to that. But this is such a critical year, and it really is. Um, Doing more research on it, but I thought I wanted to share this because um, I want you to be aware, planetary wise, what we're having this year, and looking back. Do a bit of your own research, because I've given you a couple of dates there, and you can find out for yourself what was happening. Okay, thanks for listening.